All right, so we're going to talk about verbos reflexivos, reflexive verbs. A verb, oh, very important. Your packets don't have a section for this. I'm very sorry. I don't know why it got lost. So I'd like you to go ahead and turn to the back page of your hojas de concepto and write these down there. If you need to know the actual meaning of the reflexive verbs, they are in section 2 of your vocabulary, and you hopefully would have looked them up already. If you hadn't, you can watch the vocabulario video number 2. So, verbos de la rutina diaria is what I'm talking about here, and we're just talking about how to conjugate them correctly. So, again, turn your notes over to the back page and take notes on that. And again, when you're taking these notes, don't write things down like the definition of a reflexive verb unless you need to know that when you see a reflexive verb to know what it means. Otherwise, just take notes on what you need to know to be able to master this. Reflexive verb is when the subject of the verb is also receiving the action of the verb. So when somebody is doing something to their self. And how do you know it's a reflexive verb? First of all, in the infinitive form, it has se at the end of it. So all of those verbs in that rutina diaria, acostarse, afeitarse, arreglarse, bañarse, etc., etc. Also, the verb subject is acting on itself. Another way to say what we just set up here. So I wash my hair, you wash your hair, he washes his hair. All of us are washing our own hair, so it's a reflexive verb. I remember that because if I look in my reflection in the mirror, I'm seeing myself, and that's what I'm doing with reflexive verbs, is doing something for myself, okay? And of course, it'll be using a reflexive pronoun, and here are your reflexive pronouns. Reflexive pronouns, by the way, usually come before the verb, although it can be attached to infinitives or present participles. The reflexive pronouns are me, te, se, nos, and se. And then, of course, os for the vosotros form there. So the ones we're going to use, me, te, se, nos, se. When you conjugate a reflexive verb, first of all, I'd like to say, I like to think of this as conjugating the verb twice. The first conjugation is the se part, and the second conjugation is the verb part. So I remove the se from the end of the verb. So for example, acostarse, I split that in half, and I've got acostar as one part and se as the other part. And the first thing I do, back to here, is remove that se. Like I said, I put it in front of the verb, and I conjugate that out using these reflexive pronouns right here that we were just talking about, okay? The second thing I do is put the reflexive pronoun, just said that, who is doing the verb. So it's the same thing. If I say that I am washing my face, who's doing it? I am. So it's going to be me. Okay, so I'm going to change that se that I split off of acostarse, and I'm changing it to me because it's in the yo form. Then I conjugate the rest of the verb after that. So if I'm doing acostarse, then I would do me, because I took that se off, I put it in front, and I changed me, se to me. And then I take acostar, and I conjugate it from acostar, it's an O to UE stem changer, to acuesto. So the yo form of acostarse would be me acuesto. So that's how I would conjugate it. An example would be Pedro, and if I'm saying lavarse, then it would be Pedro se lava. It means Pedro is washing himself. In that sentence, Pedro is both the subject, the person doing the action of washing, and he's also the object, the person being washed. A verb changes from reflexive to a regular verb with a direct or indirect object when the subject stops doing the action for themselves. So, Pedro se lava la cara, Pedro is washing his face. But if you say he's washing his little brother's face, it's not a reflexive verb anymore. It's the same verb, but I'm not using a reflexive pronoun. I'm using an indirect object or a direct object pronoun. In this case, this is an indirect object pronoun. So Pedro le lava la cara a su hermanito. Pedro is still the one doing the washing. That's why it's lava. But he's washing his brother's face. So instead of the me, te, se chart, I'm using the me, te, le indirect object pronoun chart. He's washing his brother's face, and the a reflects the identity of the other person. That's that a él le gusta, a mí me gusta. It's just the personal I, it tells us who it's happening to. If you need to use the infinitive form of the reflexive verb for the reasons below, you leave the infinitive part of the verb alone and only change the say part of the verb. So if I wanted to do me cepillo los dientes antes de I wake up, so instead of acostarse, who's the one that's washing their teeth or brushing their teeth before they get up? I am. It's me cepillo, so that's in the yo form. So I'm only going to conjugate the say part of the verb. So it would be acostarme. The only reasons to use just the infinitive would be conjugated verb right before the reflexive and preposition right before the reflexive. Conjugated verb would be like, necesito lavarme el pelo. I need to wash my hair. So I've already got a conjugated verb here, so it would just say lavar. And again, I'm only changing the say part into the yo form because I'm talking about myself. I could also say, necesitas lavarte el pelo. You need to wash your hair. Necesitas, to form. And this gets conjugated in the to form as well, lavarte el pelo. Or a preposition right before the reflexive verb. There's several other prepositions, but some of the more popular ones. Sin, con, de, por, para, según. Anytime you see those right before a verb, it's going to be in the infinitive. Me levanto temprano para lavarme el pelo. I wake up early to wash my hair. Okay, so here's some practice. Yo me ducho todos los días. Mi familia se acuesta. People get confused on that, but my family is one unit. Even though there might be 10 people in my family is one unit. Also, you can look at that right there and see that it's not plural. There's no S. Mi familia se acuesta a las 9. María se viste muy elegante. That's a stem changer. Mis amigas y yo nos pintamos las uñas para la boda. Fernando se cepilla el pelo antes de ir a la escuela. Yo siempre me despierto a las 8 de la mañana. Cada mes tú te cortas el pelo. María tiene que lavarse las manos antes de comer. This is not a preposition. Que is not a preposition. It is part of the phrase tiene que, which is like that verb that means has to. Hopefully y'all remember learning that in Spanish 1 and in 2 again. Tiene que, so that would have been really just the conjugated verb tiene. So María tiene que lavarse las manos antes de comer. And mi hermana se seca el pelo con un secador. And Pedro se lava, the reflexive pronoun se comes before the verb. If used with an infinitive, it would be Pedro tiene que lavarse. We already talked about that a little bit, but I just want to re-emphasize that. How would you say, do you prefer to bathe or shower? And obviously you need to pause the video if you're trying to think of this on your own. It is, prefieres bañarte o ducharte? See the te on the end because I'm talking to you. And because there's a conjugated verb, all I'm doing is leaving it in the infinitive and just changing the say part to reflect who I'm talking to, which is to, T-U. Maria addresses herself quickly. María se viste rápidamente. Maria is getting dressed. She's doing that to herself, so it stays that way. I wash my hair each morning. Me lavo el pelo cada mañana. This is actually incorrect. I'll go back and change that. It needs to say me lavo el pelo. That's actually a common mistake. And then I go to bed early when I'm tired. Me acuesto temprano cuando tengo sueño. Voila, I fixed it. Me lavo el pelo. And me acuesto temprano cuando tengo sueño. I will also write out the verb charts for the 10 to 12 reflexive verbs, and I will post them on the website if you'd like to look at that and compare the verb charts with yours. You definitely need to know how to use these verb charts. You need to know how to use the reflexive. You need to say, in my house, my mom washes the dish. Well, my mom washes the dishes. My mom wakes up early. In my house, my sister goes to bed late. I wake up every morning at 5. I get dressed quickly. I get dressed slowly. Just be able to use the reflexives to talk about what happens at your house. That is what this chapter is about, and that's what you need to be able to do. Okay, that's it.